I had everything done how I thought it was right on the database modification assignment. And when I graded it, I got like 10 points out of 100. I got one more submission. How do I make sure that any way to kind of make sure? And the answer is yes. When you make that first submission, you're going to get feedback that looks something like this. Hopefully it looks better than this, because this is like 0 out of 90. I got 10%. Good. About right for the effort I put into it. So it's going to say, look, you lost 5 points because after running your solution, it ran this query, and I expected to have 117 records. You didn't give me 117 records. I'm like giving you the key right here. Like the grader is going to run that query, and it's going to expect to find 17 records. And so, like if I copy this, I can, and I've given you a tool right here in the assignment where you can say, the assignment tab, import data with SQL, and just drop that query in there. And I don't have any 2011 data, so I'm going to put some 2010 so you can see it bring back records. But you can execute that query and it will bring back the records that the grader is looking for. So you'll go, oh, mine's only bringing 100 and it was expecting 117. You got to track down why that one's giving you less or more than was expected. And so that will be a way that you can like be sure that you've gotten it right, because every one that you get wrong the first time through, you know exactly what the grader is looking for to get it. Questions here? All right. We don't need that. We don't need this. We don't need this. We don't need this. We do need that. Okay, so let's take a look here. So we got some things to download. So let's go ahead and download. So what I had planned at the beginning of the semester for today was just to learn how to interact with Google Sheets through VBA. I'm still going to show you to do that today as kind of a stepping stone to where we're headed. The main task that I'm going to do is we're going to see how to automate working with generative AI from Excel. So you'll have some tasks, you'll have thousands of tasks that you want to have AI help you with. We're going to see how you can say, all right, let's line those tasks up, let's get them ready, and then have a program dispatch them off to. We're going to use Gemini here because I know you all already have a Google account. So Gemini is Google's generative AI. And send that request to Gemini, get the result back, put it in the worksheet, move on to the next one, set it off. So to be able to automate interacting with generative AI. So go ahead and download gemini.xlsm. And that's where we're headed today. But to get there on the way, we have to learn how can we just send an arbitrary HTTP request off to a web server and get it back. The way we've seen to do this so far is by using the web query wizard. What we're going to see today is how to set up some objects that are built into Windows that will allow us to do this with a little more control over exactly what's happening, both in control of how we send the request to the web server, as well as being in control of how we deal with what comes back from the web server. So we're going to start off this, we're going to see how we can send a request like directly to this Google form. So here's your VBA ratings. Please rate your VBA class on a scale of 1 to 10. 10, by the way, is awesome. So I should see a lot more 10s coming in here than others. Let me go and I don't know how many responses. I think while I was testing this, I think I've gotten 20 or so responses while I was working through this. So the first responses we'll ignore because that was me, but we'll see yours. Okay, so you certainly could come and just do this, but what I'd like to do is I would like to see how we can have Excel submit a response to this form. And so we've got some code kind of already set up in our Gemini example. So I'm going to open up my Gemini workbook. I'm going to close this one. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to open my Gemini workbook and I'm going to come to the code. Okay, so I've got some modules here, and let's look at the one called mod Google Form. So mod Google Form, oh no. Did I give you everything? Is this like the solution? 24? I might have given you everything we're doing in class today. We'll have time for that story after all. This was supposed to have less of this. Did I give you the whole solution? No. Okay. So our Gemini stuff is completely where I expected it to be. So we've got more than I meant to give you here. That's okay. So I'm going to look at this one called, in fact, let's do this. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to delete the one that's submit Google form with post. We're going to build that one up to understand what has to change from this first one. And we're going to start with this. In fact, here's the example I wanted to start with. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to comment out that URL there, and we're going to put in https://byu.edu. So what I want to see first is how can I just make a request for a vanilla web page and get it back using a different set of objects. And the object that we're going to create here is called the Microsoft XML HTTP object. Now, as it turns out, we can include a specific library so that we can create this object. We can actually make this object of type server XML HTTP. But I'm just showing you a different way to create an object. So one way is to say, actually build the library. That's called early binding, that when this code starts, it knows the library it's going to connect onto. This approach is called late binding. It says when this program starts running, we don't even know the library that we're going to be using. And so we've got an object, just an object variable, right? Object variable is just a place where I can keep track of where some other object is loaded in memory. I'm calling it HTTP. And then I'm going to call this create object method, which gets kind of the path in the operating system, the object I'm trying to create, and connects it onto here. And so we can actually build that object without ever making the reference to it the way that we've done that before by saying like tools, references, and going and finding it. I'd have to remember where this one is actually created, but it's one of these in here. So the drawback, the nice thing about doing this way is that you don't have to go and include the connection, include the reference. The downside is when you do it this way, you don't get any IntelliSense help. So if I come in here and say HTTP dot, the editor here doesn't know anything about what I'm doing. And so I don't get that help. But this is just a different way to create objects. So we're creating this XML HTTP object. Now that object has a method called open. I have to give it what's called the method about how I'm going to talk to the web server. The main ones that you're used to using, the number one that you use all the time is get. When you just type in like a URL and like hit enter in your browser, it's making a get request. Get request says there's just some file on this server, go and get the file. Now, and so that happens behind the scenes. That's the get method that you're using all the time, anytime you type in a URL. Now, when you fill out a form online and hit submit, and it's got information that it's putting with it, you can actually send that form by get, the same request, in which case all the parameters in the form go into the URL, or you can send it by a different one called post. We'll see that in just a second. But for right now, saying, hey, this is just asking for a web page, so we'll use the term get. For the URL, we're using this, byu.edu. So we're saying, all right, give me an object that knows how to connect and talk to a web server. Call the open method, like initiate the connection, or at least get myself set up to make that connection. We're going to talk to that server with the get method, and we're giving it this URL. So we're just saying, get the page that's at this URL. That's all we're saying. And that gets it kind of open so that we can configure it. And then when we say send, that's when it actually gets it. And so this false right here, this means it's true or false whether this is a background query or not. If this is a background query, then it says, hey, go get that page. And then my VBA just keeps on running. And whenever it comes back, the page comes back. And we're saying that's the background query. Let it run in the background. Let my VBA keep going. I'm saying it's not a background query. In other words, wait. Pause my VBA code until that page comes back. And then I'll move on with the result. And so we've got this configured. We're going to talk to this URL using this method, and we're going to wait until it comes back. Then when we say send, that's what it does. that actually makes the request to the server. And because this is false, it will wait for that response to come back before we move on. And then all we're doing is printing off the result. So response text is what comes back from that server. So this should bring back byu.edu. Just kind of come look at byu.edu and see what we should expect to see. byu.edu. So we are going to make this same request from VBA, and hopefully it won't take so long. What's wrong with BYU? What's that? Yours is slow as well. We don't have to do byu.edu. We can do somebody else. Let's do uvu.edu. They got it figured out. Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the page as rendered, but what we actually get back from the server here in Chrome, I can get to by hitting Control U. That just lets me show the source of the page. This is the text file that that server actually sent back. So I look down here at the very bottom. Here's the end of the HTML. Here's the end of the body. We can kind of see some JavaScript happening here. I don't know, what else do we see? I'm kind of looking. I'm going to try to look at the bottom of this page, and can I see some text from this that's down here? So non-discrimination, copyright complaints. Do I see any of that same text down here? Should be kind of, oh, here, YUVU. This is looking better. Can I find YUVU on the page? Anyone see YUVU? No. Oh, it's right there. Kind of surprising that that shows up at the very end. Certainly possible. I guess. Twitter, Facebook. Contact. This is probably them. Contact us. Is that about UVU history? Just want to kind of see something that I can kind of see on both pages. You see contact us here anywhere? Third column. Contact us, but then give to UVU. A UVU history. Okay, so here's where I'm seeing what's getting rendered here, and I can see that here in the page. Search, where was it? Contact us. Right above it is give. Is that Espanol? Inclusion about. So this is the little block that's getting rendered here. Okay, so we can see both kind of as rendered, and we can see it in the HTML source that came. Now, just show me on a scale of 0 to 5 how comfortable you are kind of looking at and trying to make some sense of this HTML document. I would expect to see some zeros and maybe a few fives, more fives than I expected to see. Okay, so that's, and this is what we're doing. We're saying, hey, give us a request, and we are saying, give us this page, and this is what VBA is going to get back. And so we're going to have to know a little bit about kind of getting our data off of this page. All right, so now what I want to do is come and change this to be uvu.edu. And I want to run this, because now what this is going to do is say, my URL is uvu.edu. We're going to ask for that URL using the get method. We're going to wait for it to come back. That says, actually make the connection to the web server, wait for it to come back. And now we're going to print debug.print whatever comes back. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Oh, and this is submit Google form with post. I'm going to change that to with get. And I've got this rating set up, so I got to send something to it. So I'm going to send a 1 here. And now I should be able to run that. So I'll run that, and hopefully it'll make the request. Wow, that came back so fast. And it is going to come back really fast because it doesn't have to render it. Like when you ask for a web page to come, there's 2 things that you have to wait for. You have to wait for the page to come from the server, and then you have to wait for your browser to figure out how to show that page, which may require getting more pictures and other parts of the web page to show up. And so you're going to look at this and go, wow, that's really fast. Yeah, because it doesn't have to render. It's only the time it takes to say, hey, give us the file, and it comes back. But I should be able to see that same information here. So if I scroll up, I should be able to find where it was saying contact us. Here's Title IX. It's the next one up. Contact us, right? Here's the same stuff we were looking at. Give to UVU. Where was it? The history. Here's about UVU/history. So this is the same page. We've just requested it and brought the HTML back here in VBA. Okay, show me where you are with me so far and what we've done today, 0 to 5. Okay, so you see it. Yeah, it's just we've set up a little web browser. It's not a very good web browser, but it's just to get the HTML. So now what I'd like to do, and so you can see it, get a page and then look at it. And we could now, if there was data on this page that was interesting, we could use our string parsing abilities, our text parsing abilities to go through this and find the data that we're after. But what I'd like to do now is I would like to come and look at this document here. Now, I don't want you to do this along with me. I just want you to watch this part. When I submit this, I'll give myself a 9. There's always room for improvement. I'll set this a 9, and I'll go ahead and submit. And we're going to see that it's going to be great. We took your response in, but that 9 is not showing here in the URL. It actually submitted this by a different method. It made the request with a method called post. It sends the information of that form as part of the body of the request instead of part of the URL. But what I'm going to do in this next kind of step moving forward, I'm going to change this, just this form. I'm going to say, no, send this by get instead of post. I'm going to, at this point, I've downloaded this page into my browser. I'm now going to edit this page in my browser so that when it submits it differently. So I'm just going to come here and do an inspect. So right click and inspect. Again, you don't have to do this with me. I think just watch this. And here is right click and choose inspect. Right click and choose inspect. It'll be down to an 8 before long if I can't click here. And I'm going to, I want this to, how do I see this in different format? Here, I want to float as a separate window. There we go. Okay, so this is a little bit different than the page. Like if I hit Control U, it shows me the file that the web server sent, but in the rendering process, my browser might actually change the way that HTML is set up. And so this shows me the HTML as currently rendered. So if I right click and choose inspect, that's what I get. Now, so right down here is a little thing that I actually clicked on, but as I look up the hierarchy, I should find the form. When I submit information, it's going to be in a form object. So here's the URL we're submitting it to, and there's the method. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit on this. Here's the method right here. It's saying we're going to send this by the post method. I'm going to say, no, for now, send this by get. Now, I'm not changing anything about what's happening on Google. Google has sent this page to me, and I'm saying, I know you said post, but I'm going to edit this page and say send it by get, just so you can see what's different about it. Okay, so I've just updated that HTML. So when I hit submit here, it's going to, I'll do a 7 now. And when I hit submit here, it's going to submit that by using the get method. It's a different set of rules to interact with. The server knows how to receive things by get. So I'll say submit. And so it's like, hey, your response has been recorded. But now if I look up here in the URL, I'm going to see that right here, I've got, this is all the data that's in that form, encoded to work in the URL. And right there, that first one there, entry.2025 whatever, that's the 7. If I just change that to a 10, hit enter, I just submitted that form again. Because that's exactly what that form would do. It just sends this get report, it just sends this request by get, because that's how I configured it to go. It wants to send by post. That's the normal way it sends by post, but it's you give it to us by get, we'll handle it as well. We'll bring it in as well. So I should be able to actually go and see that. If I go to my drive, hopefully that's a recent file because I don't remember where I created it. VBA rating, whew, I was lucky. And if I go to responses, I should be able to see individual. Let me go to my 44th response, and there's the 10. If I go one before it, it should be the 7. There's that 7. So those, they're actually, I'm making the request and Google is taking those in. So what I would like to do now is change what my form or what my code is doing. Instead of going to UVU, I want to bring in this other URL. Right? This URL is, it is this one right here. In fact, I don't need anything after that 10. Those are all defaults. and it's a submission timestamp and other things there. I should be able to get rid of that and then just submit myself another 10. Let me give myself a 9. I'll hit enter on that one. It's been recorded. I've got 45 responses, and that last one is a 9. That's the one I just submitted. Question. Oh, what happens if I put an 11 in there? I don't know. But as long as I'm dreaming, let's give myself a 99. It says, you know what? It's like you gave me something that doesn't fit. It's got to be 1 to 10. Okay, it actually comes back and says, no, I won't take it. Darn it. How am I going to cook the books? I'll give myself another 9. So, and that's just because Google knows, right? This is what you're responding to. Like, even though all I did was paste in a URL, it goes, hey, based on the form you're trying to talk to me about, it's 1 through 10. That's the choices. And it says, no, you gave me something besides that was wrong, something's wrong. And it probably sees this as the form being edited. Does it say that here? No, it doesn't say, but this is exactly what would happen if that question used to be a type that would take anything put in, and then I changed it. Like, that's kind of a normal thing that Google's kind of anticipating happening. And so we're going, oh, you put a 99 here, it just means you got an old version of the form that used to take a 99 and this one doesn't. Okay, but now what we're going to see is that this is the same URL, A1FALPQL. 1FALPQL, that's it, right? And if we kept checking that, we would see this exactly the same thing. Even down to this entry that ends in 6205, we'll come to the end of this, and yeah, it's entry 6205, and you can see now I'm concatenating on the rating, which is what's getting passed in to this, right? So rating gets passed in. I'm saying build up this whole URL. I'm going to bring it onto the same screen so you can see it. So let me kind of separate it there, put an ampersand in there, and break the line. That's just so they can wrap, but it's all one string, and I'm putting that on here. So now, if I say, don't give me a 1, heavens, I'll give myself a 8. So now when I run this, it should give me a new response. So let me come back to my responses here. Oh, like some of you have been giving me responses as well. I went from 45 all the way to 79. They're still coming in. I'm just curious what you guys are giving me. 3. That's terrible. Okay. So now, I think the idea was to be able to see it come in, but you won't really get the experience because you've all been doing it. So, but I'll hit play and boom, it puts in 16. I hit play again. And yeah, you guys have got that figured out. So all these ratings are coming in. All right. And if we look at the HTML that's coming back, what do we see here? Ooh, your response has been recorded, right? That is the HTML that the Google form is sending back when you make the request. So what we've seen so far then is that this is like a way that we can do something similar to what the web query wizard does. You give it a URL, send it, it comes back. What does the web query do from there? It takes what came back and tries to figure out how can I take this data and put it onto the sheet. And for us, it's saying, you've got it here as HTML. If you want it, start parsing. Get out your mid and your in string and your split and go after it. Okay. Next step is to say, all right, instead of sending this information as a get, I want to send it as a post. And that's going to take a couple more steps to get there. Step 1 is we're going to change this method from get to post. So now we're sending it as a post. The difference now is that we don't include this as like the entry from the form as part of the URL. Oh, so I'm going to make a copy of this. This one's done. Like this example works. Let's leave it. So I'm going to change this to get request with post. Still going to send the rating, I'm going to make my call now, call the one that I just changed, so post. And I got to do something to counteract all those 3s I've been getting, so I'll give myself a 10 here. And now this one, I'm going to change to be, the method is going to be post instead of get. So, now the URL is the same URL, but I'm no longer trying to put the data from the form into the URL. So let me find the end of this URL, and that question mark right there, that question mark says everything after the question mark is the parameters. It's the data from the form. So I'm going to get rid of the quote, and I'm going to get rid of all the rest of the stuff after it as well. So now the URL, can I get that to fit on my screen so you can see it? So now the URL just ends with form response. I still have to get this data sent to it, but under the post protocol, I don't put it as part of the URL. Instead, I put it in what's called the body of the request. Maybe I should have a variable called body. Dim body as a string. Okay, and now instead of having this as a separate part of the URL, I'm just going to make this my body. So body equals, it's exactly the same that I had on the URL. The question mark is gone, but everything else is the same that I have here for the body. Now, as it turns out, there are multiple ways that I could structure the body. I could say this body is like JavaScript object notation. This is a particular notation that my server is expecting to get. It's JSON notation. Or I could say, hey, this is a URL encoded form, and that's the way that Google is expecting this to come. A different structure about how things are built called a URL encoded form. And that's this idea where I have the name of the argument and then an equal sign and then the value that I'm sending in. And so I have to do one more thing when it's post between when I open it and when I send it. And that is I have to tell it, I have to say, hey, this request that I'm sending you to this URL, it's got this body, but here's how to parse the body. The body is not JSON, it's not raw text, it's not binary, it is it's form, it's encoded form data. And so I will say this is another property of my object, my web server interaction object. So http.setRequestHeader. SetRequestHeader is going to take 2 arguments. They're both 2-string arguments. So go ahead and kind of put my quotes in there first. So a request header has a name and a value. And so the name here is content type. And this, all this stuff that I'm putting in here is defined in an HTTP protocol, hypertext transfer protocol. It's like the rules that a browser follows when it's communicating with a web server. And when you've made a web server, you're following the same protocol, following these same rules so that these 2 pieces of software can interact with each other. So servers are expecting a header called content type. And if you pass it to it, it goes, oh yeah, you sent me a content type. I now know something about how to understand the data that you sent. And the content type that I'm putting in here is this string, application / x-www-form -URL encoded. If you know something about making a form with HTTP or with HTML, if you use the post method when you're setting up that form, the browser will build this header as part of the request that it sends. So we have to specify it when we're working with this object in VBA. We're sending this as that particular type. And then we just send, like when we say send, we send the body that we're trying to send, BODY. So we've set that up to be the name of the field that it's expecting, an equal sign, and then the value that it's expecting. So this should do exactly the same thing that we did with get, except now we said post. And because we said post, we'll be sending the data in the body instead of the URL. And now there are different ways that we can send that body. This one's going to be URL encoded form. I cross my fingers, there's a lot to type. Did I get it right? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and run it and see if it works. Let me clear off my immediate window. And I'm like, this one is called submit Google form with post. And so that's the one I'm calling. I'm sending it to 10. I'm going to go ahead and run this. Yeah, it looks like it brought back something. Oh yeah, submit another request. That should be there. Submit another response. It should say somewhere that it was received. A lot of text to find that in. Terms of service. It's here somewhere, I guess. Yeah, here's the name of my form. So it's here. I just don't quite see where it says your thing was recorded. And it's kind of tough for me to actually find that 10 because I'm sure many of you have been submitting 10s as we've been looking here. 285. Ah, excellent. Is that the 10 I submitted? Like, not a chance, but we can see that they're kind of coming in, 299 responses and so forth. Okay, so the point here is that different protocol or a different method. So the protocol says when you use that method, some other information you have to supply. Show me where you are now, 0 to 5. You introduced a new protocol using post, you have to set a header. Okay, a little more complex. Now, the reason that I wanted to get to this example here is because this is the way that the Gemini API is expecting you to talk to it. It's expecting you to send it some information via the post method. So we've seen it work with Google Forms. Now we're going to translate this to work with Gemini. Here's the task that we're trying to accomplish. Let's suppose that you've got these 1,000 customers. For whatever reason, you do not know their gender. And because of some marketing thing you're doing, you know that women tend to respond differently than men to this couple of different messages. You have a message that is more targeted towards getting a favorable response from a woman, and it's a separate one that you're going to send to men. And so you would like to say, I don't want to send a generic message, even though I don't know their gender. I would like to get a good guess at their gender so I can send the appropriate message, so I can increase the likelihood of getting a favorable response from this email campaign that I'm doing or whatever it is. This is, and so could you do this? What do you think? Could you look at that name and decide, I think that's a boy's name or a girl's name? Arbor is a tough one. Robin's a tough one because it goes either way. Charlie? Maybe still a little tough, but I think probably more masculine. Laura? I think it's a feminine name, usually, like in our culture. Ellis, I've known both. I think the first 20 I put in here, a bunch of them were kind of ambiguous. Ren, Stephen, Lisa, Karen, Brian, like a bunch of these I could do, but I don't want to do that. I've got 10,000 customers that I got to make a guess on their gender based on their name. Who wants to do that? Any of you here want to do that? No, that's why we hire interns, right? It's to do the work that no human wants to do. And so fortunately, we have another option now because Gemini would love to do this for us. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to come back to wherever we started today. Okay, so now we've been in the Google form. Now let's come to the Google Gemini AI Studio. Now, this AI Studio is not where you would just kind of normally come and interact with Gemini. This is where you would come and say, you know what, I'm getting ready to interact with Gemini through the API, which is what we're about to do. Let's get here so I can practice. Okay, so step one, let's get ourselves an API key. So get API key. And I'm just kind of worried at the moment that when I generate it, like I don't want to record myself generating it. So I've got my API key. I'll create API key here. Oh, and I actually just wonder if I've actually published, because I gave you different than I thought. I wonder if I actually gave you, oh no, fortunately I didn't give you my API key. So we're going to put it here on the settings page. So we're going to click create API key. And create it in the existing project. Okay, I'll create it in the existing project. I'm kind of new at this myself. Select a project for your existing write access code. Oh. When you drop this down, what choices do you have? Oh, really? Make a new key then. Let me get onto one that I haven't worked on before. So let me come here and we come to incognito window. We log into something. The Gov. Do I remember my password? No. Curses. There's one that might remember my password for me. It's Miracle. Uh-oh, I gotta check my phone. Yes, that's me. The number is 48. All right. So now I'm going to try to go here and hopefully in hopes that I get the same experience that you get. Access Google Studio with your workspace. Is this what you got? Let me go back and copy the link because it might have changed. Copy the link address. Paste it in. That's my colonial self. Okay, so why am I getting something different than you are? Let me try to follow the link from here. Gemini Studio. All right, let me see if I can figure out how to get an API key. Get an API key. Get an API key. All right, we're going to see if you can figure out how to get an API key. That's your in-class assignment. If you follow it, is it kind of straightforward? How are you getting your key? I'm sure that I could, and that's what I'm about to do. I just wanted to kind of show what you guys were doing. So if you've got a key, great. Copy that key and create an API key. I'm going to pick one of these. I'll use this one, I guess. Create an API key. And I'm going to copy it. I hope that's not the whole one. Now I'm going to paste it in right here. So in our sheet, we've got a list of people over here. I'm coming to settings and I'm going to paste it right here in B2 where it says enter your API key here. I'm going to take it off the screen so I can paste it in without displaying it to everyone. Although I think it actually showed the whole thing on the screen. So I'm sunk already. It's okay. I guess I'll just hopefully remember to delete this key. So now that key is in there. You don't see it in here because the background is the same color, but I've got the API key in here. We'll come back to using that API key here in just a minute. Does anyone need help getting that API key generated? Besides me, I mean, that was terrible. So you guys got it okay. All right. So to come back here, I copied it. That's fine. So now I want to come and just work in this environment. We update our terms of service, whatever. Now I got to remember, it's kind of showing us how you can use this key using the curl thing. Unfortunately, that's not, well, maybe we'll play with that as well. Let's see. Create new key, tune my library. Help me get back to the main interface here. I guess I'm just going to go back to aistudio.google.com. Good. So now I can do something to write a prompt. Like, is the name Robin a girl's name or a boy's name? Name Robin can be used for both boys and girls. Historically, I don't want to know where it originated. Just want to know which email should I send, boy or girl. So let's see if we can just get this. Get this prompt be a little bit better. Oops, great. I just pasted my whole URL in the video. Let's see. Express your answer on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 means you are extremely confident, highly confident. It is a boy's name. And 10 means you are highly confident. It is a girl's name. Respond with only a numeric value. Five. Good. That's what it says. That's right. It doesn't know. It could go either way. I'm liking this a little bit better. Let me try to take that whole thing again. Let me just put a different name that might be a little clearer. Why don't we say Ellis? It's another one that I'm not too sure about. 4. It gave me more. I told you, respond with a numeric value only. Without any commentary. I don't know. Well, it went from 4 to 5 when I said no more commentary. Oh, it's because it was Robin again. Okay, good. Let's try Ellis one more time. So I think that might be a prompt that, we've kind of figured out, like the task that we're asking Gemini to do. Good. Now it comes back with a 4 and nothing else. And that's what I want. I want a scale of 1 to 10. I can have some idea about how sure Gemini is about the gender of the person based on their name. If it's really sure that it's a boy's name, I'm going to send a different message than if it's really sure it's a girl's name. And if it's somewhere in the middle, maybe I'll have to send even a different one. I don't know. But the point is, I don't want to have to go do that by hand. I don't want to use the collective knowledge of whatever Gemini has figured out in its long life to do that for me. So now I want to be able to send this request through VBA code instead of doing it right here by hand. Now, when I said get API key, that's okay. Let's see, I guess I still have that copied. Okay. Yeah, it comes here with this, like with this example right down here. So here, I'm going to try this. I'm just going to try this in Windows and see if it works. So you can do this by opening a command prompt, and unfortunately, my Windows menu comes up off screen. But if you just type in this PowerShell, PowerShell, and that should bring up a window that looks something like this. So PowerShell. So hit the Windows key on your keyboard, type in PowerShell, and it should identify something like Windows PowerShell, and it gets this. Is that what you see? Okay, so I'm going to open up Notepad and paste in like that example that they gave us, because I'm going to have to edit this. Okay, so I went to get API key, and I copied this example. I'm putting it in Notepad because I have to edit it. And then I'm going to run it over here in this. The thing I'll have to do is when I run curl in Windows, I have to say curl.exe. And I'm not sure the rest of these slashes are right, but we're going to see if it works. It's also asking for my API key to go here. So I'm going to paste that API key in, if I can find it. And it's asking me to write a story about a magic backpack. I don't really want to read that, but this will just let me show if it actually works. You can see that we're setting it by post. And this curl program should just let me do that at the prompt. Let's see if it works. If not, we can probably do it directly in VBA, but it would be nice to see this work just at the command prompt first. Yeah, so this is curl meant for Mac or Unix, Linux. And there's going to be like some slight differences here from what we get in Windows. I just don't remember what the differences are. But like it's trying to show that, let me just open up quickly somewhere that I know it will run in that format. So I've got a Linux machine that I can just run. Yes. Oh, maybe I can't. Choose Oracle VM. Enter. Never mind. We're not gonna do that at all. But this is the information that we'll need to configure our prompt to do. Okay, so now that we've worked on the prompt, we've kind of seen how to work with it. Let's go ahead and try to make VBA do it. Where's my VBA? VBA, where are you? Okay, so let me view my Project Explorer. Let's be editing a cell. View my Project Explorer. And I'm going to come now to Mod Gemini AI. So this is, we've been on Mod Google Form. Now we're coming to Mod Gemini AI. And let's go ahead and I'm going to copy over my post example from Google Form. So submit with post. This is on my way to where I'm headed. I'm going to copy that one and bring it into Mod Gemini. Put it after the end sub that's in here. And what we've got here is that we've got a loop that's set up just to loop through that initial data. So we're kind of looping through that data here already. We're printing it off. We're activating the sheet. We're selecting it. That's it. Okay, so let's call this, instead of calling this submit Google Form with post, let's call this ask Gemini. And instead of sending a rating, let's send the prompt as a string. And instead of this being a sub procedure, let's make it a function procedure. And let's have it return as a string. Okay, so we've made some significant changes here. We changed it from a sub to a function. We gave it a different name. We're still sending one parameter, but we're setting a prompt instead of a number, and it's going to return a string. If I run this as it is, it's not yet calling Ask Gemini, but it should be scrolling through and printing off my data. So let me come back to we can see my page sticking out over here. And let me also bring on my immediate window. And so my get gender should, yeah, it's just scrolling off those first names. And I stopped after 200 because I didn't want to wait for it to go through all 1,000 or so that we had here. All right. Now what I'd like to do is, after I select that cell, let's go ahead and write into column F is where I want the gender to go. So if I plug here, look into column F, instead of selecting it, I want to set the value. What's the value going to be? Whatever Ask Gemini returns. Now we've got to work on getting the prompt set up, but I think we've got the structure now in place. We've got to figure out how to send it the prompt, and we've got to figure out how to make this thing actually talk to Gemini. Well, let's go ahead then and do it. I'm going to go back and look at Gemini because it gave me the endpoint to talk to it. It's right here. Like this, everything right here is what we need to talk to. So the URL, instead of whatever Google form thing I was doing before, this URL is going to be https://generative-language.googleapis.com, and then all this other information with my API key on the end. So that's the URL. Let's go ahead and change my URL function to be that URL. Or I should say my URL variable to be that URL. So I'm down here in Ask Gemini, and URL now is going to be that whole thing. Instead of your API key, I'm going to concatenate my API key on the end. Now, my API key is in B2 of my settings sheet, but that's a named range. I named that range API key. You can see the name right here. So I should be able to just ask for the value of that range. So I'm going to concatenate on range API key dot value. So I'm just reading it off that sheet, but I've named it, which will make my code a little bit easier to work with. Stop. It's expecting me to send a string, so I'm just going to test it up to this point. What happened? Gemini. I'm not doing anything with the string, but I do need to send a string, so I'll just send an empty string here. So it's going to get to my first one. It's going to send Ask Gemini, send it nothing, but I'm just checking to make sure I've got the URL set up correctly. And instead of rating, I'll just name that to prompt for now. And okay, so I'm there. Let me see what URL is. Yeah. Does it have my key on the end? It has my key on the end. That looks great. Okay. Step one. Good. Now, let's look at what our body needs to look like. So here, you'll see that the content type we're sending is application JSON. So here, this flag here for curl means set the header. Well, we're going to say the content type is going to be application JSON. So I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to update my request over here to set the header. Content type is there, that's okay. But instead of URL form encoded, this one is expecting the body to be in the structure of JSON data. And then here is the actual data that we're sending. That's the body. Contents, and this is like kind of all these quotes and these braces and brackets, they're all important. They've got to be just right on. But what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to change where it says, write a story about a magic backpack. I'm trying to change that to say that whole prompt that we engineered. And to make this a little bit easier to work with, again, on that settings page, I've set up the prompt already. So the prompt is right here. I guess the first question I'm going to ask, just to see if I got it working, is what is the capital of chat? Of the country named Chad. So let's send that prompt, and then we'll move over and use like this prompt over here, which is similar to the one that we generated. So that's the prompt, but here's the body, right? It's that same thing, content, parts, it's got these braces and these brackets. The same thing we have here, content, parts, a bunch of braces and brackets, but it's organized here so that we can see it. So we can just use replace to replace this prompt here with the text that's right here. So let's go ahead and do that for this first example. So the body that we're trying to send, instead of being here, it's going to be, let's take on this whole body, and this one is called body simple. It's a named range called body simple. Body equals range, body simple. Dot value. Now, so that has now made body equal to exactly the contents that's in here. I'm going to change it, the next line, body equals what it used to be, replaced. So replace, look at body, look for prompt in capital, and replace it with, why don't we actually send the prompt in here? So we've got a variable called prompt. So I'm going to replace it with whatever is sent in. So we still have to actually define this variable. Right now we're sending a 0-length string. But now my body should be ready to send. So now have I gotten everything here? Change the URL. I've changed, we're still doing post. Yeah, we're sending this as application JSON, and now we're sending that. So let's just actually send our prompt in, which is again a named range called prompt. I'm going to come up here to my main one. And we've already got something called a variable up here called prompt as string. So just before I send it down, let's define that. Prompt equals range prompt dot value. And now we'll send it prompt. Why not just put range.prompt.value inside these parentheses? That would work just fine, but we're going to do something a little bit more complex with this coming up. So at this point, we should be sending the question, what is the capital of the country named Chad? And if we've got all the stuff around it correctly, it should respond with the name of the capital of that country, which I cannot pronounce. But it starts with a D and it has a quote somewhere in the middle of it. So kind of a weird name. Anyone know the name of the capital of Chad? I don't know why you would know this. All right. I'm curious to see if we got it. So I'm going to clear out my immediate window. And I'm going to move my stop. Take my stop off of here. I think this is all will be fine. And let me just go ahead and put the stop right after we've assigned it. So here is where we are writing into column F. And I'm going to say stop. Because I don't know how to spell replace. I didn't want to replace it. I wanted to repaste it. Place. E-L-A-C-E. Okay. It looks like I got a response back. Let's look in the cell. Gender confidence. Oh, because I haven't set the return value. But I did print off. I'm printing the response text here, my immediate window, and I can see it. Here's what it comes back. In this JSON structure, it's sending back open brace, candidates, contents, parts. Text is right there. N apostrophe J M DJ. I don't know. That's the capital. That's the name of the capital. That's great. We sent a request to Gemini from VBA. And Gemini responded with their structure. But now the trick is going to be, I got to get the answer out of that and actually send it back to go in. And it's this whole JSON structure. Here's the bad news. JSON is newer than VBA by a long time. So when they're making VBA, this structure that's pretty standard in modern languages, that you could just say, oh yeah, let me just work with this data. Like we can import other objects that will work with it, but it's not native. I don't want to introduce that today as more complexity, but it turns out that if you send it a request and it won't answer, you will not find this string in the text, like text, like quote, text, quote, colon, space, quote. So I'm going to look for that. And if it says that, I'm going to assume I've got an answer here. So I'm going to come down to my Ask Gemini. I'll stop my code. I'm going to come down to my Ask Gemini function, and I'll declare a position variable. And I'll make one called temp as a string as well. So I've declared POS and temp as string variables. And I'm going to look at the response that came back here, and I just want to find out. I'm going to set the position to where it finds it. So position equals in string, starting at the first character, looking at the response text from my request, looking for quote, text. Oh, this is terrible because those are double quotes. And I have to use double quotes. Oh, I'm going to do this. You can probably feel fine to do it right there in place, but just to make it clear, I'm going to do it over here in Notepad. So I'm going to start off by first doubling up those quotes, because each of those quotes that's inside of a quote, I want to be doubled up. And then I'm going to put a quote at the beginning of it and a quote at the end of it. Oh, that's terrible. Quote, 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 3 quotes, TEXT, 2 quotes, colon, space, 3 quotes. That's the string that I'm after. So I'm looking for that string. Now, if my position equals 0, that means it didn't find it. If it did find it, I'm going to do something. It's easy to do what we want to do if it's not there, right? If they didn't give us an answer, I need to see what did it send back, because there'll be some kind of error message or something. And so I'm just going to send back everything. So it's going to send back the whole response text. It'll be a little bit ugly. It's going to drop the whole JSON block into that cell that we're working on, but at least I'll be able to see it and figure out how to work around it. Otherwise, let's do this. Let's make our temp variable equal to, and I've got the starting position. Yeah. So the mid of the response text, starting at the position. That will actually get all of that in front of it as well. So it's going to take, right, because it found it here where this starts. So I want the position plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think I want the position +9 is where I want it to start. And how many characters do I want to bring back? I want to bring back everything until I find the next quote. But the quote, it actually might be a quote in the middle of it. So let me bring back everything until I find the character after that quote. It's probably, we're getting out of time. Let's just go for the quote. So, I got to set the return value, set the name of the function equal to it. So I'm setting the name of the function equal to response text. Here, I'm going to set the name. I'll just set temp one more time. Temp is equal to split temp on the single of the double quote character, which is character number 34. I'll write it that way. I could do 4 quotes in a row, would do it as well. But character number 34, split it on a quote. And then take everything up to, so this is going to be that string separated to only be what starts here and everything else. So I want to start from there and go until I find that quote. So I'll split it on this quote character and I'll return the 0th item. And then I'll just set ask Gemini equal to temp. So if it finds the string text or quote, text, quote, colon, space, quote, okay, great, we got an answer in there. Let's send it back. And that's what parses it to send it back. Otherwise, send back the error. Okay, so now if I run my code, it should put Gemini in to the cell. Let's give it a shot. Stop my code. I'm going to run it again. Did it work? It did. So now, instead of just asking for the capital of Chad every time, I want to send it the fully specified prompt. Good news, I've already written that prompt and accessible to you in Excel. It is on our settings. It's right here. Use a 10-point scale to indicate if the name, and then we've got the parameter name, is your masculine or feminine in the United States, respond with numeric value, etc. So that is called prompt 2. So let's do this. Let's come back to our code where we're calling it, and instead of saying that the prompt is just prompt underscore 2, and then let's change it. Prompt equals replace, look at prompt, look for name. We're trying to get that to actually have the customer's name in it. Look for name and replace it with the customer's name, which is what we're printing off here. So it's people, cells, row number R, column number 2. So now at this point, in fact, I'm going to put a stop right there and just check it. I'll stop all my code and run it again. At this point, it should now stop as I've made the prompt. Let me just see what that prompt is. Yeah, use a 10-point scale to indicate if the name Arbor is considered masculine or feminine in the United States, and then the rest of that prompt I'm telling you to do. So now I think I'm ready to send that prompt down and see what it brings back. I'll just run it again to that next stop, F5. Hit that stop. Oh, it looks like it brought back an error. Darn it. What does it say? Finish reason is safety. So now it's giving us all these categories. It's like, look, listen, does this prompt have a high possibility of being hate speech? No, it's a low possibility. Is it sexually explicit? Thank goodness, no. It's like negligible, even lower than Low probability. How about this one? Is it dangerous content? No. Is this a sexual harassment? Medium. It's a medium question to be asking. A little frustrating. That's okay. So it turns out that we can be a little more specific about how we talk to Gemini. And that's what our final body is. So this body has some safety settings in it. So it's the same structures we had before, contents, part, prompt, but now it has some settings. And for the category harassment, only block if it's high. If it's medium, let it go through. Like a medium thing, like asking, I don't know if they really think this is a medium thing or not. Maybe so. But only block it if it's high. Can you say don't ever block it? No. You can't ever say don't ever block it. So only ask if it's high. So this is body safety instead of body simple. So let me just go change my code to pull that body in. So where do I bring in the body? Instead of body simple, I'm going to bring in body safety. And it should then parameterize with the prompt and everything. So I'm going to stop my code and run it again. Get gender. Oh, there's my prompt. I'll run it to the next one. Hey, it collapsed down. That's good. 7. What was it? What did I say? Is one masculine or feminine? I know what it was when I did it on our example here, but what did I do on the one that I gave you? Where one means you're highly confident that it's masculine. So okay, so this is more likely to be a feminine name, apparently, according to. That's outstanding. Let me go ahead and bring this in a little bit more. Move my code over a little bit more so I can see it happen. Let me take off my 2 stops and let it run. Maybe I'll reduce this down to, instead of 200, I'll stop at 20. It's bringing them in. 5, 7. Yeah, Robin is at 5. I got a 10. It's confident about something. Uh-oh. Oh, resource exhausted. That means I did it too fast. And actually, when I did this all by myself, I was able to run a potload of them all together. So I think it's because we were doing it together that we ran out of this resource. So that means that we either need to slow down, or we need to buy more capacity, or something else. But this basically came back and said, sorry, I'm not going to give you the answer. Why not? It's because you're asking too fast. You resource exhausted means you did this more than you're allowed to do it. But you can now see the process here. So this is the same for working with any API. It stands for Application Programming Interface. What do you want to see? The code down below. Application Programming Interface. It's saying, hey, listen, we're designed to work with, like, have other programs work with us. And so what this does is says, great, we're going to send you the request the way you're expecting it. You're going to send us back the response, and we'll deal with it however it comes back. Questions? As you might guess, this is the first time I've done generative AI from VB. Just show me on a scale of 0 to 5 how glad you were that we did this today. 5 is, I'm really glad we did this. 1 is, couldn't we have done something different? So a few of you at 1, 5 is 2. Okay, thank you. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.